looking at the rationalization of government agencies. Now, if you have been following events and the news, you must have heard more than 2 years ago that government had plans to merge many of the agencies that are executing duties in this country. The idea was to ensure that there is less duplication of roles. For example, if you have the Roads Fund, you have the Roads Authority, and then there is an oversight agency too that also works within the same docket. The idea was to find a way to merge, rationalize, mainstream, and then transfer some of the duties of one agency to another in a bid to ensure that the wage bill too is taken care of, because the more you have agencies in government duplicating their roles and responsibilities, the more you have to pay the people in public service. It's a wide topic. What I can say right now is that that target has not been reached, and at the end of June we won't be having any mergers executed. Why? What is happening? The other day I was speaking to an official, and we agreed that it's very difficult to have an executive director of an agency work around the clock in order to do away with his job, and perhaps those are some of the challenges that could be being faced right now. But let me just introduce my guests who are going to help us understand this rationalization of government agencies. I have with me Joseph Turiatemba, Assistant Commissioner Research and Standards in the Ministry of Public Service. Many thanks for joining us, Mr. Turiatemba. And joining us too is Christine Birinjiro, a Program Manager at Uganda Date Network. You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Let me begin with Mr. Turiatemba to give us an overview of this rationalization process, what it seeks to achieve, but just to hammer down the fact that of the 157, only 80 will remain as they are, 36 are expected to be merged, 33 mainstreamed, and then 8 will have their responsibilities and functions transferred. That's a bit too much for my little mind to get around. Could you just help me explain?
Thank you, Mr. Chris Igenyi and Christine and the viewers. Government agencies, when we talk of government agencies, we are talking of commissions, authorities, and parastatals.
That's right.
How they came into being, the Constitution of 1995 creates a number of them, like Equal Opportunities Commission, Human Rights Commission, National Planning Authority, and others. Then there are other agencies that are created by acts of parliament, like National Forest Authority, Uganda National Roads Authority. Then we have another category of agencies that are created under the company's law, like the companies of Uganda Electricity Generation, Transmission, and Distribution. Those are created under the company. So Ministry of Public Service was directed by Cabinet, and we provided 157. So of those, 80 to remain they are currently, 36 to be merged, 33 to be mainstreamed, and 8 to be transferred. Cabinet approved a 2-year period starting 2021 to 2023. Now, what have we done? We have implementation teams. A Ministry of Public Service, there is a restructuring team where I come from. We have got also a human resources team that looks at the implications of the human resources, how will you handle compensation.
That's right.
We also have assets and liabilities team of Ministry of Finance, because these agencies have assets.
That's right.
They also have liabilities. Then also we have got a legal team of Ministry of what? Justice, because these agencies were set up by law. You cannot simply merge mainstream without revisiting the legal regime. So those are the teams. Now, how the teams are working, we have got a cabinet subcommittee chaired by the Minister of Public Service that looks at what the teams have developed before they are taken to the cabinet. We have two phases. The first phase, the 53 agencies have been approved by cabinet. Their structures are ready. We have another phase of 16. They have also been what? Their structures have also been approved by cabinet. Now, we also have a roadmap on how to implement this program. As part of the roadmap, once you cannot implement structures without changing the legal framework. So what now is remaining is Minister of Justice to submit proposals on the legal framework to cabinet, and then we'll finally go to parliament, because one of the cardinal roles of parliament is to make what? Make laws. So we still have that step to go to parliament to present the necessary legal regime. Now,
allow me interject there before we get, especially me, I get more confused. When this was mooted, the need to eliminate the duplications, the overlaps and wastage as a result of a multiplicity of agencies, what was the first step that ought to have been taken before you get to a point where you have to first address the legal aspects and then understand that they already have mandates and they are rolling out? What is step 1, 2, 3, 4 to this process to the layman?
Thanks, Chris, and the viewers. The first step is to look at each agency, look at its functions. And each agency has got a parent ministry. The functions came from,
that is
for example,
UNRWA, Minister of Works.
UNRWA, it came from Minister of what? Works. But ministries are supposed to handle policy. These agencies are supposed to handle implementation. You get me? Implementation, regulation.
That's
okay?
right.
But along the way, we noticed that there was now people left what they were supposed to do, and they were now doing what is not theirs.
Why? Isn't there a framework that is laid out for authorities, agencies, and parastatals? Why would UNRWA be confused about what it's supposed to do?
Yeah, but also with time, you know, government, the one that created these agencies, there's what we call policy shift. Policy shift that you see, yes, we have a ministry, and by the way, again, most of the staff in UNRWA who are performing very well came from the ministry.
That is a discussion for another day.
Came from the ministry. So there is that relationship between the ministry and the agency.
The agency, yeah.
Yes. And these agencies were now, once you allow duplication again, never allow duplication to exist in any organ, even your home. That two or more people are doing the same or related things.
Now, you
what
have,
is the danger with
my
that?
ear.
The danger with that is, Mr. Igenyi,
yes,
you are duplicating resources. You are duplicating effort. And it is even a fertile ground for conflict. And we don't want conflicts in organizations. Data Network are talking about how can we use the little resources very well. Yes.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Joseph Triatemba, for that overview. There's a lot that we shall be, of course, looking into in detail. But let me first get the picture of the duplication, the lapses, and the wastage that is currently going on. And Uganda Data Network, you are at the helm of monitoring and putting together some of these things. What is the state of affairs when it comes to Uganda, a nation that has a litany of ministries, agencies, like he says, parastatals, state authorities,
commissions,
MDAs, commissions? We're about to come up with something else.
Units, but that is... thank you, Chris and Mr. Triatemba. Well, you recall that around 2017-18, the president came up with this directive actually to rationalize government agencies. he directed the Prime Minister then, Dr. Rugunda Ruhakana, and the then Vice President, Dr. Sekandi, to make sure that they come up with a blueprint to eliminate duplication and wastage of resources. And indeed, the National Planning Authority, in their end-term review or evaluation of the NDP2, they noted that the NDP2 had performed halfway, 50%, had achieved only 50% of its goals. And one of the main reasons advanced for this was the duplication and of the agencies and institutions, which led to wastage, of course. And so the president was right when he said we need to rationalize, you know. And this was actually supposed to originally to take place within 2 years, between 2020 and 2022. You should have rationalized. The target was during implementation of NDP3, because this rationalization was to start with NDP3. So between 2020 and 2022, rationalize so that the remaining half of the NDP3, at least we are implementing. We see agencies that are lean and implementing the NDP3. And so, you know, we can have better results. But alas, unfortunately, the recent midterm review of the NDP3, still by the NPA, says that we are actually at 17% performance, which is not a good thing. While I supported the president, I do support him with the mainstreaming, because, you know, you'll have our domestic debt, for instance, has increased from, you know, about 50 trillion in 2019 to now 86 trillion. 0.6. Our domestic arrears are shooting through the roof in just 1 year, from 4 trillion to, we are now talking about 8 trillion, 7.9, which is 8 trillion. And what forms part of that domestic arrears? It is the rents that we are spending in some of these agencies that are duplicating roles. It is the fleet, the government fleet, some of which vehicles we are servicing, we are fueling, you know, to duplicate some of these roles. And so some of these things, you know, will help us. We will save, we hope to save some resources. I hope Mr. Turia will give us a true picture of how much we envisage to save through this rationalization. Some have talked about 1 trillion every year, whether it is 500 billion or 900 billion. But I want to believe that as we push through the rationalization, that it is only prudent that as we are pushing for this, we want to see us walk the talk.
Okay, let me bring this home, especially for my cobbler, the guy who is a layman and wants to understand how the resource hemorrhage is going to be halted. Let me first stay with you, Christine, from Uganda Debt Network, before I get to Mr. Triatemba to break down the dynamics of merger, mainstreaming, you know, and stuff like that. When you look at the Ministry of Health, for example, and you see the number of cars on the road, UGM, and then you have time to go by some of the ministry offices and installations, and then you see a car that is visibly in fine shape. It's a double cabin. It has been parked for over 2 years and has overgrown grass, and you're wondering, can't this car be repaired? How did it break down, yet it looks to be still in fine shape? What is the ideal scenario? Should the Ministry of Health not have these cars, or what kind of fleet should it have, for example?
Yeah, thank you. And precisely our concern, actually, a few years ago, UDN ran a campaign on misuse of government vehicles, and we later met with quite a number of ministries, those who had, you know, been involved so much in the misuse, the ambulances and etc. And so ideally, we think these vehicles should be where the services are running, because what does it help me as a taxpayer to have you, for example, Minister of Health, have maybe 4 vehicles, but you do not have a vehicle that is in the field. For instance, you don't have an ambulance, you know, at a health center. And so we see this as wastage, because these vehicles have to be serviced. These vehicles have to be fueled, you know, and surely this cost is this cost on the taxpayer is not it should not be visited on the taxpayer.
Okay.
Yeah, we see that as wastage, and so that is why we welcomed the talk of rationalization, because it also creates convenience for me, the service user, if I want to go to, for example, URSB at George Street.
That's right.
And then I have to go to NIRA in Kololo to go. I get a border because I don't have a car. I'll get a border, run to Kololo to register maybe and get my national ID. And then because I'm from Uganda Debt Network, I'm supposed to check on the status of my organization. So I have to run to Kingdom Kampala on another border and, you know, do the registration. And ideally, if they were all under one roof, you know, I just go once, you know, for convenience, I sort all my registration issues. Yeah, and so that, to that extent, we think rationalization is good, is a savior, and if carried out in the right way, we feel it could save us, it will be able to save us some resources.
All right.
Okay.
Mr. Triatemba,
Yes.
listening to Uganda Debt Network,
Yes.
you can't miss the point that they are dismayed by the state of affairs. Before you explain the key terms: merger, mainstreaming, transfer, and which one is the other? There must be 4 terms that we need to understand. Remaining, okay, that one is understandable. Those ones won't be changed. Merger, mainstreaming, and transfer. First and foremost, tell us which dockets of government. Where is the hemorrhage? Is it in the health sector? Is it most apparent in works? Is it most apparent in defense? Please.
Thanks, Mr. Agany. I don't have, I'm not an expert on, from what I understand is our public service. Beyond that, I think there's like Parliament should be in a position to say that these sectors are not the ones that are performing very well.
That's right.
Minister of Finance, because of the financial resources, but for us, our mandate is on the human resource.
On human resource.
And structures. Yes. She has talked about fleet management. That would be another area for rationalization.
That's right.
That you need to rationalize fleet as well. Yes. Now, the key words, when we talk of merger, it means that get the functions of one agency, put them with others. That is merger. Okay? For example, you have electricity generation company merged with transformation, and yes, so that you have one company, you are not losing the functions. And also, Ms. Iganya and Christine, you know, these agencies, as part of governance, they have boards. Boards. So they have boards who are paid, are facilitated. So once you say put 3 agencies together, then you're going to have only one board. And we are saying the boards across agencies should be standardized in terms of size. Some agencies have big boards. So we are saying the standard should be 7. Number 2, their tenure should be the same.
That is right.
Serve 2 terms, say 4 years, and their pay they are currently paid differently. So rationalize pay of these.
Does that explain why you see a commissioner in one agency driving a V8, and then you see an official who is at a higher position than a commissioner in another agency driving a lesser
You are
car?
saying it all.
Anyway, let's...
Now, the merger is about, and an example of the mergers is the one of companies. There is also Uganda Free Zones Authority merged with Export Promotion Board, another example. Then mainstreaming. Mainstreaming means that you look at the functions that are performed by an agency, you take them back to the mother ministry. An example, you talked about UNRWA, meaning that don't lose the functions that are performed by what? By UNRWA on national roads. Take them to the ministry. Within the structure of the Ministry of Works, either create a department or use existing structures, and so don't lose those functions. And we're also saying that don't lose the technical staff. The engineers who have been, if they are ready to go to the terms of the mainstream public service, they should be given first priority. Those who are not ready, of course, the other processes.
Allow me ask you, you've explained merger and mainstreaming.
Yes.
I think we shall be looking at transfer. Transfer is pretty...
it is just getting functions of one way.
It's migration.
Migration. Take them
functions.
to, like Equal Opportunities Commission functions. Take them to Human Rights Commission. They are rated. Functionally, they are rated.
Now,
yes.
I'm an old man.
Yes.
And when I was younger, UEB was responsible for the power sector. If we now have Uganda Electricity Transmission, Uganda Electricity Distribution, Uganda Electricity Generation Companies,
yes.
and we have the need to rationalize, and we seem to be grappling with the how and the when and the what. What is wrong with getting the blueprint of Uganda Electricity Board and how it used to operate to be the blueprint that can be simply fine-tuned?
Of course, with modifications, because things have changed. At the time, the scope, with time now, the scope. But you are going to have Uganda Electricity Company. Like, you link it now to the former UEB, where they were handling everything, but of course with modifications. So that
the agencies right now become units under...
Yes, that's what we are saying. In terms of structure, what we are saying, that you have that one company with 3 strategic functions of generation, transmission and distribution. Then you also have structures to support. You don't lose those functions.
Where could the real problem be in terms of meeting the timeline of achieving this particular goal?
Yeah, in the first place, I think that's where we went wrong, creating all these agencies and institutions instead of looking at the problem. If the problem is staffing, for example, before you create the generation, the distribution, and like all these others, why don't you get this staff and simply strengthen the institution that is existing instead of staffing the institution, you now create a separate agency, of course, which comes with all these other costs, and this is where I went wrong. But it's good we seem to be back on the right path, though with reservations, because why I was saying we need to walk the talk is because we see on one hand we are trying to rationalize, we are moving forward with rationalization, and then on the other hand we are frustrating these efforts. I don't know whether consciously or unconsciously, because as the president talks rationalization, we need to remember that even after talk of this in 2017-2018, later in 2020 we see us creating cities. If maybe for 2020, at least as an example, we had 7 cities. Later we are supposed to continue creating until we have about 15 cities by 2023, 24, around that. But what is the implication, the financial implication of these cities? One, each of them will have to send 3 representatives to Parliament, for example. Do you know that the size of our Parliament has grown from the 10th,
I'm aware, I just can't do anything about it.
10th to 11th Parliament by 131 MPs.
And
Now,
those are resources.
that will, they get salaries,
Okay.
11 million, for example. They get emoluments, they get vehicles. And so I'm afraid we might be trying to save a 1 trillion per year here, but we are spending what we shouldn't be spending, really. Wasteful expenditure might amount to 5 or 2 trillion.
All right. There's a lot, of course, to chew on. Just allow me transition very briefly before we return to this conversation to go to Ivan K. Walunyolo in Entebbe, who is going to give us perspective on the budget. A very good morning, Ivan. Good morning, Ivan.
Behind me, people are already doing their businesses, and these are people, of course, that move out to fend for their families. But we know there is a lot to talk about, and away from the conversation that you've just had in the studio. The budget reading is just, can I say, hours, days to, and of course the common man expects a lot from what government has prepared for them. These people are taxpayers. The people you're seeing behind me are selling a lot of things to pay tax to the town council, let me say government in general. Naye abantu bano nabo balina bingi bye basuubira, tukimanyi bulungi nti embalirira y'eggwanga obudde bwonna egenda kubeera ng'esomebwa, naye abantu bano nabo balina bingi bye babeera nti basuubira okubeera nti biteekebwa mu mbalirira eyo, okuli ebyobulamu n'ebintu ebirala. Naye twagala kubeera nga twogerako nabo batubuulire bintu ki bye basuubira nti ku luno embalirira y'eggwanga bw'enaaba ng'esomebwa birina okubeera nga biteekebwa mu nkola. Just twagala kwogerako n'abantu omu, babiri, basatu batubuulire biki ebyo bye balowooza nti birina okuteekebwa oba okuusibwa mu mbalirira y'eggwanga egenda okusomebwa. Just saawa ntono okuva kati oba mu budde bwonna tunabeera nti tufuna okusoma kw'embalirira eyo. Kanjogereko n'omuntu omu, babiri, just batubuulire kiki kye balowooza ekirina okuteekebwa mu mbalirira kisibweko esira mu mbalirira y'eggwanga bw'enaaba ng'esomebwa mu Parliament. Sebo nkwaniriza ku NTV.
Nange sebo kusanga.
Biki byolowooza nti birina okusibwa mu mbalirira y'omwaka guno bw'enaaba esomebwa mu Parliament yaffe? Tutandika n'amannya go.
Amanya Mwanje Francis Kintu, ndi musomesa ku Boston High School Empala. Mbwe ntunulira ebyenfuna mu kacyo kano tebitambudde bulungi, waliwo okunyigirizibwa. Naye nze ng'omusomesa nange nsinga kwesigama ku ludda olwange olw'ekisomesa. Nandyagadde nti ebintu ebikozesebwa mu kusoma wamu n'ebisale by'amasomero bibeeko engeri gye biyingirwamu okutaasa embeera. Kyekimu n'emisala gy'abasomesa giri wansi nnyo, oluusi nekikonzibya ebyenjigiriza. Singa wajjawo nga liri etteeka eryalirize erikwata ku nsasula y'abakozi, nti waliwo omusaala ogutandikibwako nti at least bagulambika ntalina kukola nga kka wansi w'omusaala ogwo, kijja kuba kitaasa eggwanga. N'ebikozesebwa by'abaana mu kacyo kano biri waggulu. Wabeewo polisi eraga nti bwe kiba kyetaagisa gavumenti etandika okuba ng'einvestinga mu kukola ebitabo oba mu kukola amakalamu n'ebikozesebwa mu masomero ebirala kikolebwe.
Omusomesa otugambe oli musomesa, tubale tumanyi kati oli ku ssomero, naye mu katale tulaba olina by'ozoogula.
Ku makya nkeera kweshopingira bintu byawaka ngera bw'omanyi ne Bayibuli bwegamba, sooka okole kubeeka then olabe baki. Kati nze nganze musomesa wa secondary, somo lyange litandise essaawa katugambe 5 6 bwe zityo bwe tuye embeera eriwo. For example, nyinza okuba njekolerwa nfuna emitwalo ameka 50. Emitwalo 50 gayinza obutamala kumalawo omwezi mulamba n'okubeezaawo abaana bange. Nyina abasomera miliyoni enamba 5 n'abalinga ki. Kati olina okuba ng'oyiyaako ewalala n'okatayiminga.
Kyali mu katale wano njogera n'abantu bano tubuuza nti kiki kyolowooza kirina okuusibwa mu mbalirira y'omwaka guno, gwe nga muntu wa wansi gavumenti kyerina okuteekako esira ng'esoma embalirira y'eggwanga. Tutandike n'amanya ssebo. biki ebyobulamu mulimu ebyekusoma emisolo ebintu bwe bityo
ebintu bwe bityo bintu birungi nnyo amanya gange nze Bent Kalinzi ebintu bya muzeeyi byaneteka mu mbalirira ng'emu kati abalire bano abavubuka basobola bafuna emirimu gyabwe gamba sente zibaayo ziyamba abavubuka mu mbeera zaabwe kati saawa zino tulye ntubonaabona batugobaganya okuva ku ki
nasembayo okulaba nga mukolera eri ku kkubo kati ate muze eno mu kyalo
wakabaale olwo omulama
musasula
omusolo bulungi tubonaabona lwaki kyetwakwebuuza abantu baffe bano abavubuka nga ffe agenonyeza omulimu waki tubonaabona gavumenti etufeeko ekyo ekisonga eyo
kale nkyali wano mu katale nkyayogerako n'abasuubuzi bano abasuubuzi bano bawa gavumenti omusolo naye embalirira y'eggwanga egenda kubeera ng'esomebwa twagala kubabuuza nti kiki kye mwagala gavumenti eteekeko essira bwebanga esoma embalirira y'eggwanga bintu bingi nnyo ebyokwerinda ebyobulamu naye twagala batuwe sebo wadde oli ku bugi naye tugenda wezaawo mpolampola tutandike n'erinnya sebo
amanya nga Aruna Kasolo
Aruna biki byoyagala mu mbalirira y'eggwanga bisibwemu oba biteekebweko essira
bisibwemu oba biteekebweko essira kyensaba bakubugi bwange beramu kyensaba gavumenti etuyambe ndowooza kutukendereza ku mafuta omuwendo gw'amafuta baffe tuli basuubuzi amafuta gatunyigiriza ekisinga ensonga esinga otutunyigiriza nga ffe abakola ki abasuubuzi mu katale kano
nkyali mu katale wano njogerako n'abasuubuzi baffe bakola emirimu gyabwe bakyatubuulira kiki kye balowooza ekirina okuteekebwako essira nga gavumenti eteekerateekera sebo embalirira yakusomebwa eri eggwanga naye golowooza kiki gavumenti kyerina okuteekako essira bwebanga esoma embalirira eyo tutandike n'amanya sebo
amanya n'eddoboozi wa Alex yes embalirira nabo bagisoma batuyambe batukendeeza ku mafuta amafuta ga bbeeyi enguudo nfu nnyo batukendeeze ku mafuta bateremu n'essere z'enguudo enguudo gyetujja ebirime nfu eggwanga lyonna ze ndowooza yange
omukulu naye alina endowooza ye kiki kyolowooza kirina okuteekebwako essira nga gavumenti esoma embalirira y'eggwanga ey'omwaka guno n'oguddako tutandike n'amanya go sebo
amanya gange bambita tugume musa
tugume
okuva wano kubayita ababiri mbekabaale naye nga gavumenti yakati gye tulimu erimba kwaffe abantu ba wansi tuwulira nga twekyawadda tetulina kyetwagala etukolere kuba ne bwe tusaba buli kyetusaba tewali kituukirira eyo endowooza yange nga nze kuba kati esaawa zino twerwanirira nga ffe abavubuka obutale batugobanya ku makubo buli kimu bintu bya bbeeyi amafuta ga bbeeyi buli kimu kati nabwe tusaba buli kimu tewali kigenda mu maaso kati n'olwekyo gavumenti ekole byeyagala
kale mukulu
batusindise nnyo mu kyalo batutadde mu kyalo batukanyuga bbali gavumenti etulekeredde abantu b'owansi ffenna tulinga ba wansi twaddidde ddala wansi
waliwo ebyobulamu ebyenjigiriza ebyokwerinda n'ebikuteekerateekera abavubuka n'okubayambako bakyala bintu bwe bitolowooza wa ssente nyingi zebanga zitunula
omuntu oba wadde olina weofunira ate ne bakugobawo ne bakuzza ebbali ng'ate takulaze wogenda kudda kitegeeza bakunyigiriza
kafundikire noono omukulu olowooza biki gavumenti byerina oteekako essira bwe besoma embalirira y'omwaka guno sebo
amanya n'eddoboozi nze mubiru David Masigire nze ekyembadde nsaba gavumenti omusolo gw'eggwanga obeera embalirira efokisinga ennyo ku nguudo n'amalwaliro ebintu kale ebiyamba munnansi owa wansi kuba kati enguudo zigenda nezigwamu ne bazikola bubi entindo nezigwamu tuli basuubuzi b'amatooke emmotoka eyo mpanvu tesobola kuyita eri gye baatuzza ate amafuta nga mangi ne tuyita wala emmere nemala wiiki namba mu kkubo ogenda okugituusa eno okugiwaaba emidaala nga nabo bamaze okukola kyemaze okwengera so gavumenti etuyambe ekole ku nguudo
naye mu byobulamu ebyenjigiriza ebyokwerinda n'ebintu ebyokuyamba abavubuka golowooza waawe walina okuba nga wateekebwa nnyo ku kasente nebirongoka muko
basokere ddala ebyokwerinda kuba watali security tewali kirala n'ebyeddwaliro n'ebyokusoma gavumenti esuubira nnyo okuwa abantu bamemba ba palamenti sente empitirivu nemme omusirikale asula nga akutta emmundu kyovala batta abantu lwakwagala sente ne balema okusomesa abaana abasomesa sente ntono so tusaba gavumenti eteekemu nnyo ebya security ebyokwerinda n'okukola enguudo amanya ddonze mubiru David Masigire.
Okay, Chris, those are some of the views that you can hear from the the people here on ground when they're trying to also argue and make their case. But of course, most of the submissions have been around supporting a common man so that he or she can pay tax. But for time reasons, I want to get back to the studios and let the rest of the conversation continue.
Thank you very much, Ivan, for bringing us up to speed with the temperature among the locals in Entebbe. One of the gentlemen who was asked a question there said there is a lot that is going on in terms of the pressures economically that Ugandans are grappling with, and he signed off by saying government yakoleche yagala. That is apathy and resignation. Let me return to the studio and wind up this discussion about the rationalization of agencies of government. Of course, I have with me Christine Biringiro, a program manager at Uganda Date Network, as well as Joseph Turiatemba, Assistant Commissioner, Research and Standards at the Ministry of Public Service. Let me begin with you, Mr. Joseph Turiatemba, to break down very quickly which are the notable agencies that are going to be mainstreamed, merged, or whose functions are going to be transferred.
Okay, thanks again, and the viewers. The examples of agents to be mainstreamed, I start with Rural Electrification Agency under Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development.
Yes.
And for it, the process has already started because it does not have issues of the legal framework. So for it, we are fast-tracked. It is our quick win. We have a structure. Public Service Commission is already doing placements.
You need more quick wins, yeah.
Yes. There are examples of mainstreaming the National Information Technology Uganda, NITAU, to be mainstreamed into the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance.
That's
The other example for mainstreaming is the National Lotteries and Gaming Regulatory Board under Ministry of Finance. Yes, I'm just speaking. Mainstreaming.
Of course, UNRWA, we've talked about that. UNRWA will be going back under Works?
Under Ministry of Works.
That's interesting. Somebody was telling me UNRWA is a whole
The other example of mainstreaming is the National Forest Authority and Uganda National Meteorological Authority under Ministry of Water and Environment. Yes. Then, of course, under Ministry of Agriculture, they also other number of them to be mainstream, like Coffee Development Authority, Cotton Development Authority, Dairy Development. Yes.
Does Narrow survive? Or
Narrow survive because of strategic function of research.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Now, the examples of mergers, they talked about the one of energy companies.
Transmission, distribution. Okay.
Yes. Then we have in education the examination boards. We have the one for nurses and midwives and the one for the RID Health Examinations Board. You are targeting health workers, but you have separate boards. So those ones are candidates for merger.
Okay.
The Free Zones Authority Export Promotion Board, I've talked about that. The planning functions in the government. You have got National Population Council. It is part of planning.
That is right.
You have got National Physical Planning Board. That is planning for physical planning. But also you have got National Planning Authority. So those ones to be
the
one.
National Planning Authority should be the umbrella organization.
It is the umbrella. Actually, it is like absorbing those two. The name will not change.
All right.
But you will create departments for those ones.
Okay, quickly. I think we don't have a lot of time.
Transfer is like you have...
transfer is effective to those who are going to lose their jobs.
Yeah, transfer, like it. Uganda Qualifications Framework to National Council of Education. Equal Opportunities Commission.
Now I understand why this process is taking long, because even if it were me, I wouldn't expedite my job loss.
Exactly.
That's a discussion for another day. Just wind this down. The whole aspect of the cost, can we even be able to save money in the short term?
Yeah, thank you, Higeni. Government is looking at saving 959 billion from this exercise, and that is annually.
All right.
But now look at it from the lens of this Equal Opportunities Commission staff who will probably lose their job and maybe will be, you know, given some compensation, which maybe might not even come on time. I'll go and sit at home. But I'm looking at someone in maybe the State House Anti-Corruption Unit, because those are not going to be part of the list for merger and what. Someone who is in State House Anti-Corruption Unit is doing what ideally the IG is doing. Better still, look at Health Monitoring Unit under State House, Ministry of Health, and then BMAO in Ministry of Finance, Budget Monitoring Unit.
That's right.
And what they do is practically monitor some aspects of service delivery under health, education, and those others. So basically, this is the same mandate, but given to different institutions. And you also have a unit. By the way, the president also wanted two. I don't know if he has already created one.
There's another anti-corruption agency
yes,
in the
targeting investors only. And so I will not be excited as a taxpayer or the gentleman who is losing their job if I see this waste. There's still wastage, but you're talking rationalization. We need to walk the talk. We need to sit back on the table and say and appreciate. I mean, our debt is shooting through the roof by the day.
That's right.
And so if we have to rationalize, let's see the State House Anti-Corruption Units and all that also phased out.
All right, Christine Birinjiro, Program Manager at Uganda Debt Network, many thanks.
What she has talked
about, I'm afraid,
when you look at the Constitution,
I'm afraid we don't have a lot of time.
The president has the powers to establish offices.
Okay.
And that's why I'm saying, if we are talking
Mr. Joseph Turiatemba, I hope the message is very clear, and I also hope that we don't have a lot of agencies establishing their own towers. The Deposit Protection Agency has its own towers, and then the Archive Center has its own complex. These complexes can house as many as 10 agencies of government, especially after the mainstreaming, the merging and transfer has been effected. That will do it for the Kickstarter discussion, but stay with us. We shall be getting perspective on the budget. Youth participation in national budgeting. Priscilla Regina Naloga will be at hand to see exactly how this is affecting the young persons. Do stay with us.